bass.
Welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm. This is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I am your host, Scott Dr. GX Goldfine. If you enjoy this programming, subscribe to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube, which is where Truth and Rhythm lives, and be an advocate by spreading the word among fellow funk, jazz, and R&B music lovers. Join Truth and Rhythm's membership program through Patreon. You can also submit a direct donation to the cause anytime at funkandstuff.net. At that site, you can also purchase the book Everything's on the One, The First Guide of Funk. Shop for official Truth and Rhythm and Funk and Stuff merchandise, and use the Amazon links for all of your online purchases, which allocates a percentage to this show. For those of you who go the extra step in supporting the show, you have my heartfelt gratitude for allowing us to continue to shine the light on those special artists whose quest is to find truth in rhythm.
I'm honored to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership acclaimed and accomplished rock and jazz drummer, composer, and producer Cindy Blackman Santana. In addition to her own solo and group leader releases, she has distinguished herself through long associations and collaborations with rock star Lenny Kravitz and her legendary husband, guitarist Carlos Santana. Other notables she has worked with include Joss Stone, Bill Laswell, Buckethead, Angela Bofill, Vernon Reid, Jack Bruce, Ernie and Ronald Isley, Narada Michael Walden, and so many others. Her most recent album is 2020's Sprawling, Give the Drummer Some. And this year she's performing with both her own band and Santana. Cindy, thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm great, and thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing well. So good to have you, and I understand you're coming to us all the way from Hawaii. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
Wow. Well, I envy that. So beautiful.
It is. It's a paradise here. You know, it's such a blessing. And this is a real gift because the island is so beautiful. And, you know, there's a vortex. There are many vortexes of energy spots here, you know, and this particular island is known as the third eye chakra of the Hawaiian island chain because it's at the top. And so you really do get a lot of breakthroughs with insight being here. It's amazing how the energy works, you know, and then it's just gorgeously beautiful. So it's a win-win.
And that's Kauai that you're on?
Yes.
Yeah. I was there many years ago, and so beautiful. And that canyon they have there. I think that's the spot on Earth where they get the most rain, and somewhere in that jungle they have there.
This is the one and two, one or two, the first or second wettest spot on Earth. You know, so we get tons of rain. This is the rainy season right now, and the deluges of rain are incredible. At the moment, it's not raining, it's overcast, but this morning, earlier, we had some rain and the droplets were so huge. The sound was amazing. So rain or shine here it's just absolutely gorgeous, you know. And the rain produces such beautiful plant life. The leaves are thick and gorgeous. It's so green here and just lush. So it's definitely a tropical paradise.
I always wanted to do one of those helicopter tours there. I didn't get around to that, but hopefully it's on my bucket list.
I see them, you know, there's a valley below and some mountains behind us. And so I see the helicopters going around. I'm not that brave. I'm not really excited to get into a whirlybird that has no doors and you're just kind of buckled in and you're just, you know, kind of hanging there on your own. But it looks amazing, and I've seen some footage, and my friends tell me that it's absolutely incredible, and that you can see parts of the island that you would never see, like the center of the island where there's, basically nobody living. You can see all of that, places in the island where you can only hike to, you get a chance to see all of that from above. And, it's really gorgeous, but, I have not braved a helicopter ride, and I'm not really looking forward to that aspect of it myself.
It's funny because I would sooner do that than get on stage like you do, but there you go. So again, so glad that we could connect for this, and been a fan for so long and an admirer. Before we jump in, Cindy, I wanted to just check in and just make sure, on Carlos, his health. I know we had a few issues in recent times. How's he doing?
Oh, thank you so much. He's doing so great. He's doing so well. He's very healthy and very happy. And this is a respite for us. This is a place to come and just, relax and rest up and rejuvenate, eat really healthy foods. And so he's doing fantastically well, and very much looking forward to our summer shows. And couldn't be happier. Yeah. Thank you for asking.
So glad to hear that. So glad to hear that. So going to test your memory banks a little bit to get us started. You grew up in Ohio and Connecticut, and drawn to drums early as a child, and you had that lineage, with the women in your family having the musical talent. But I want to share with the folks, what was it you think about drums and rhythm in particular that just clicked with you like it did?
I always was attracted and drawn to the drums when I heard records, and I didn't necessarily know what they were because I was, a small child. And my mom says that from the moment I was born, I was always tapping and, making rhythms and looking for things that made sound, whether it was on her back or whether it was on a pot or, something that was cavernous so that I could hear some sort of tone. And she said she thought that I would outgrow it. And then she's like, well, you never did. So, I think it was innately inherent in my soul to want to play drums, because I had no idea what the drums were. I was just attracted to that role in music, to that sound. And then when I saw a physical drum set, I was completely attracted to the physicality of it, the way the drums were set up. I loved the way they looked. When I got my first drums and the first time I took a drum head off and smelled the wood, I was attracted to the smell. I just liked everything about it, so it's just something, I think that called me from the moment of my inception into this realm.
It's so fascinating to me because I've heard from a lot of drummers that just so early on, they just had gravitated toward it, that they just felt that rhythm pulling on them, sort of.
Mm-hmm. It's a calling, and it's a very natural calling, because pulse is part of what created this universe. It's a very important part of the universe. It's a very important part of the planet. There's a pulse to the earth, and we all have a pulse because we have a heartbeat, so it's a very important aspect of our makeup and the makeup of everything that we see. So to be attracted and pulled towards rhythm, to me, is a very natural thing. And so I find that, a lot of drummers, like you said, say the same thing. And I applaud everybody's willingness to embrace that, because we need to give pulse back to the universe, to give pulse to ourselves, and to share that rhythm with others. I think it's very, very important. And it makes a difference in our lives. It's very healing too, when you have children who, have just normal development, or children who have some sort of learning challenge or, physical health mental challenge. It really helps people, not only children, but it helps adults. It helps seniors. When if you go to a nursing home and you play drums, it really helps people kind of get into, a movement. And so to me, it's a great thing all the way around, no matter how you look at it, whether you're the actual performer of this or whether you're the receiver. It's also part of our language. It comes from Africa with the communication that it was used for. And that also created the music that we have, because it was call and response. One drummer was playing one thing and the next drummer, in whether it was, in the nearby area, village, or whatever you want to call it, or in the same area, they responded. So then we get this call and response thing, and that turned into the blues. And so that whole thing was furthered and developed right here in this country. So to me, we should have a really incredible affiliation with the drums here. And we owe the drums a lot.
Yeah. So, and how old were you when you got your first legitimate set, and how did that feel?
Well, I have to say, I got my first drum set at the age of 7. I started asking for drums at the age of 3, but that was like a little toy kit. So when you say legitimate drum set, I got my first drum kit, my first student model kit, when I was 11.
And did you play in the school band and things like that, or just on your own?
On my own at first. And then, when I got into junior high school, I started playing in the concert band, stage band, the jazz band, the pit orchestra band, the orchestra, so I played in every aspect that I could find in my school. And then I joined bands, with other people my age, in my area. And we used to play little concerts, like, we would do outside festivals. We would play at school dances or different colleges. My mom didn't want me to grow up too fast. So clubs, were out of the question for me at that time when I was so young, when I was 11. But by the time I was 13, I played my first gig with a funk rock trio, and we started playing in bars and clubs and stuff like that. And that was comprised of 2 friends of my older sister who was singing. My sister Anasa, she was a singer at the time, and so my mom was okay with that because she knew the people, but she was very guarded. And so there was a lot of playing that I wanted to do that I was not allowed to do, because she was like, no, you're not going to grow up that fast. I don't want you around those elements, or, in the nightclub element, and all that. So, but I did have some beautiful chances to play, and found actually some amazing people to play with.
And I know that you have deep jazz roots, but as you were coming up and in your teen years, let's say, were you into also contemporary artists, or was it, immediately you were just drawn to the jazz cats?
Oh, sure. I mean, because, well, firstly, in my house, we had all kinds of music because my dad loved jazz. So he had records of, Miles and Ahmad Jamal and different people. My mom had been a classical violinist. She had to stop when she started having children. And her mom was a classical pianist. So we had classical music around, and she would take me to concerts. My older sister liked everything from Miles Davis to Jimi Hendrix to, the Beatles to Chaka Khan and Rufus to James Brown. So she had like a 200 stack record collection that I would dive into. And, of course, raid and listen to all the stuff that she had. And then my younger sister and I grew up with the pop element, so we had that. My brother liked jazz, my older brother. So, there was all of that stuff swarming around in our house. And I started playing at home I would play to the funk records and stuff like that, and do the poppy stuff, because that's what the kids my age were kind of listening to at 11, 12, and 13. And then we had a family friend who was a drummer. This is when we lived in Connecticut, and his name was Doug Woods. He took the name Daoud. He played drums with Jackie McLean. And he said, if you want to be a drummer, you got to listen to Max Roach. And so he turned me on to a lot of Max Roach records. I think Un Poco Loco, that was maybe one of the first records. But anyway, he took some transcriptions of Max and wrote them out for me. And I was like, well, wait a minute, he's doing that with his left foot and his bass drum, and then it's all playing different stuff. Okay, that's interesting. I got to get into that. So that really got me intrigued, because it was a bigger challenge, and something that sounded really cool. And I was able to use all of my limbs. I was so excited about that, So, I got into that. And my older sister had a guitar player friend who as well said to me, look, if you're serious about the drums, you have to listen to the best drummer on the planet. So he took me to his house, and I didn't know who he was talking about. He and his family were upstairs having dinner. He sat me down in the basement and he put on a record. He came downstairs afterwards and he says, what did you think about that? And I said, that was absolutely incredible. Who's that person on drums? Thinking that it had to be some elder statesman. I had no idea who it was. And it was Tony Williams. It was, and he was like, well, that drummer is 16, so he played 4 and More and Live in Europe. And I was hooked, when I heard those records. That just blew my mind, because I had no idea that somebody so close to my age could have played something like that at the time that he was that age, and I think I was probably 14, at that time. And I was just totally mesmerized. And so that set me on a track, and my brother picked up Love Supreme. And so I got turned on to Elvin, and I started investigating and listening to all these different records. And I found some Art Blakey records. And I thought, in my naivete, this is kind of funny. I thought, because I heard Elvin first, I thought that Art Blakey came from Elvin. And then through study and through talking to people, I'm like, oh no, Art Blakey is everybody's daddy. Wait a second. So, that whole thing just put me on a trek to study and learn, and get deeper into the realm of jazz and creative drumming. And still, I was listening to the other stuff as well, because I loved, James Brown music. So, I certainly loved Jabbo and Clyde Stubblefield. And I was listening to, everything else that I could possibly hear. So I heard all these drummers, and of course I love Jimi Hendrix, so I heard Mitch Mitchell, and then I would listen to the tie-ins that these drummers had, to each other and to the different musics. So that has been, and it still is, a beautiful quest, respite, and relaxation for me to listen and to appreciate and to stay on the trek of listening to all this stuff that I love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, all those diverse influences certainly come out in your choices, Who was the first person that you actually saw perform in person?
The first great drummer that I saw was Buddy Rich. And I didn't know who he was. I had we lived in Connecticut at the time, in Bristol, and there was an amusement park there. I don't know if it's still there, called Lake Compounds. And so, I went there to go on the rides with all my friends, but there was a ballroom, and there was a big band in there doing a matinee show, because this was on a Sunday in an afternoon. And so they were doing this matinee, and I heard the music, and my friends were running over to the rides, and I'm like, I want to see what's happening in there. So I took my little ticket, thinking that I could use my ticket or however many tickets to get in. And so I walked up to the door and I gave the guy my ticket and he was like, how old are you? You can't get in here. You're a minor. They're serving alcohol in here. And I'm like, oh man. So I snuck around to the side and I just peeked in and I was watching and hearing as much as I could hear through the window, which was shut, but I was, listening and could hear, and watching this drummer. And I'm like, wow, he's got incredible hands, whoever that is. And the next day I went to school and I said to my band teacher, I just heard and saw the most incredible thing. There was this drummer playing, and I said, this old guy, I was, 13 at the time. I said, there was this old guy, and he was playing, his hands were incredible, and it was amazing. And he said, well, where did you hear this old guy? And I told him at Lake Compounds, and I said he was playing with, a big band of musicians. And he said, yeah, that was Buddy Rich. So that was my first, introduction to one of the greats. And it was Buddy that I saw. Yeah.
Wow. I only saw him on TV, but man, yeah, he was so fast.
Absolutely.
So thank you for sharing all those influences, Cindy. When in your path did it sort of register with you that you could and would make a career or life out of music?
I knew right away that that's what I wanted to do. I didn't know what a career and life of music meant because I was too young. But I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I knew that that was my calling. And, as I was going through my growth periods and, exploring different things and checking out different things, I was reading different books. And I read a lot of books that my older sister turned me on to that really showed a lot of, let me see, how do I put this, mistreatment of people, mistreatment of Black people, like, racism and different things, mistreatment of anybody who was different, whether they're Black or white or whatever, but anybody who was different. So that made me want to become a lawyer. So I thought, oh, you know what? I want to be a lawyer because I don't like injustice, for any person. So I want to help that. And so I looked into law, and I said, well, wait a minute. That's a lot of study. And I don't mind the study. I don't mind the work. But to do that and to really put myself into it and to be successful at it, I won't be playing drums. Forget that. I won't have time to play drums. And then a couple of years later, in my biology courses that we were taking in school, we were dissecting things and we were learning about the brain, we were learning about the eyes. And the eyes were very interesting to me. That's what I did my final report on. But I was very interested also in the brain and in the way that the brain ticked. And so then I thought, well, wow, I want to become a brain surgeon because that is really interesting. I want to, it's very intricate and I like the intricacies and, I want to find out, what makes a brain work and what's in there, how does thought occur? I was very curious. And again, I checked into studying that and there was even more years of study. I'm like, I will never play drums, so forget that too. So those were the two things that really caught my attention that were, totally opposite of playing music, but they didn't win out because I love music more and that's my heart. So that's what I went with.
It's funny as you're talking about, though, I'm thinking about how those disciplines would come so in handy with going into music and drums, because you got to have a sense of legalities and contracts in the music business for the legal side. And then, of course, brain is so key to music and the psychology of it and how it affects the brain and all that sort of thing. So I see some tie-ins there.
Oh, absolutely. And that's true. And the way that the brain works is very interesting. The way that thought happens and what happens when you create a thought. Because as I, grew and matured, and through my metaphysical studies, I realized that thoughts create things, so there's more than just a mosh and mesh of physical, matter in our skulls. There's a thing that really connects us to the all that is. and we can make things happen. So there's so much more to thought and to the brain and, to our whole makeup. So that really got me interested in spirituality. And religion, okay, you can say religion, but more than religion, it really got me into spirituality, because to follow one course is cool, that's great. But to look at the whole and to see all the tie-ins and the core thought, the core elements that are involved in every true religion, that really was very interesting to me. So I've done some study, a fair amount of study, in that area as well. And I love that, and later in life, I studied, I grew up in the Methodist church, Baptist church, and I studied Falun Dafa, I studied Kabbalah, and later I took some brain balancing courses from the Jewel University of Sciences. And that has really helped me as well. And I just recently graduated from that. And that has opened up my realm of thinking in terms of the power that we have in here and in here, and what we can produce and what we can actually do. And I like to mention that because I definitely hope to inspire others to really think about that and consider that, because, we are powerful beings. We are sparks of the Creator. We have the creative gene, if you want to call it that, in us, because we were made by the most incredible Creator. So since we're part of that, and since we're made up from that, we can create pretty much anything we want, and so the more of us who understand that, I think the more of us will be able to create balance in this realm, on this earth. And I think that the way that things are going now, with the crazy times that we're living in, the more people who understand that, the better off we're going to be, because we can do things up here and in here. We can change a lot. I think it's very important to understand that.
Yeah, that's some deep thoughts, and it's so important to be thoughtful and mindful like that. So as you were, developing your skills and talents, how comfortable did you feel on stage performing? It's one thing to, be gifted and learn the techniques and all that, but it's another to really perform it and to be comfortable with that and to really put it out there on stage.
You have to live it, you need to practice for sure, and you need to learn the fundamentals, and you need to build a vocabulary. But you have to feel it in here, and you have to live the music. You have to love the music, and you have to love what you're doing. And once those elements all come together, then you start really developing not only a reverence for what you're doing, and an ability to work with others to make this energy happen, but you start to develop your own avenue and outlook and your own pathway. But that can only come, to me, that can only come through study. It can only come through really, checking out all that you love that came before you. It can only come by application. When I first moved to New York, I played on the street for 2 summers in a row. That was so helpful, because all the stuff that I was learning from, going to watch the great drummers in clubs every night, I was able to put into practice. And also from, of course, listening to the music that I studied on record and, whatever videos I could find. Then I was able to put things into practice when I played. So you're physically able to put them into practice. And then when you live them, when you put them into practice through your heart, it's just, royal after that. What's important for people to realize is that we have to live the music. We have to love the music. We have to love playing, because all of that comes out, so once we've gathered, all this information, we've studied, the greats that we love, we've taken things from them that we are inspired by. And then when we're living the music and loving the music, we're able to put that into action. We're able to put that out into everything that we play. And, once we learn the value and the joy of playing with other people, then we're also able to expound on that from that perspective as well. Because there's an energy that's created anytime you get together with another person, whether it's just talking or whether it's playing, and especially when it's playing music, because we are electrical beings. So what does electricity do? It creates current. So when we're playing, we're creating an incredible current, an incredible frequency. So when we are doing so with positive feelings of love and great intentions, man, there's no stopping, what you can do. There's no stopping the amount of hearts that you can touch and the amount of people who you can make happy, and happy people make a happy world. Happy people don't bomb each other. Happy people don't want to see somebody else suffer. Happy people don't want to take from someone else. Happy people want everybody to have, and want everybody to be joyful, and want everybody to be prosperous, want everybody to be successful, want everybody to feel love. And to me, that's one of the highest joys of playing music.
Mm. And your first album came out in '88, Arcane, right? And it was a jazz release. And how did it feel, being a leader? Did you always, because you've played with others too, obviously. Did you always want to kind of lead your own thing, or did you kind of fall into that?
I wanted to lead my own band. My first band actually was when I was going to Berklee School of Music in Boston, and the band was called Spontaneous Combustion because we didn't really rehearse. We rehearsed pretty much on the bandstand, and we just created stuff as we went, which was so much fun. That band was a lot of fun. So I wanted to lead my own projects in my own band. When I got to New York, I was kind of just too busy trying to up my game and learn as much as possible. And I was really not thinking about doing my own record at that time. But Wallace Roney had his first record and used 2 of my songs on his record. And Tony Williams was on Wallace's first record. And Tony came into town on some other project, but didn't bring drums. And so I said, well, he can use my drums, of course. So I was kind of Tony's roadie for the day and brought my drums in and was able to be at the session, and the rehearsal, not only because were they using my drums, but, were playing a couple of my songs. So that was an amazing process to see. But in terms of what you asked about the leading of the band for me, Michael Kuskuna, who was the producer of that record, and Joe Fields, whose label it was on, Muse Records, liked my tracks so much, my songs so much, that they asked me if I had more. And I said, yeah, I have more, because I was experimenting. So I was writing all the time. I said, yeah, I have tons of songs. And so Joe said, well, you want to do your own record? I was like, me? My own record? Yes. So that's kind of how that happened, So I have to thank Wallace, God rest his soul, rest in peace, Wallace. I have to thank Michael Kuskuna, and I have to thank Joe Fields for that. And I have to thank Tony for not bringing his own drums.
How was it when you met Tony Williams after being an admirer like you were?
It was the most amazing thing ever. And the way that I first met him was I was playing with Don Pullen outside of Washington, D.C. Wallace was doing a gig somewhere in DC. Tony was playing at the Kennedy Center in DC with Herbie, Dizzy Gillespie, Ron Carter. And so we were like, you know what? Our gigs end early. Let's go sneak in. So we kind of went to the Kennedy Center and snuck in the back, which Wallace knew because he was from DC. He knew how to sneak in. So we snuck in, and I'm thinking to myself, if we get caught, there's nobody I can say that I'm here playing with, because Al Foster is playing, Tony's playing, those guys are so known. I can't say I'm playing with any of those bands. What am I going to do? I guess I'll just get kicked out. So I had my stick bag, and, of course it was full of sticks and whatever I needed for the gig I did with Don Pullen. And I'm walking backstage and somebody says, "Hey, is that a stick bag?" And I was like, "Uh-oh, I'm busted." And I said, "Yeah." And so the guy said, "Do you have brushes in that bag?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh man, can I borrow those brushes? I'm Tony Williams' drum tech, and I forgot to pack brushes in his stick bag. And Dizzy wants Tony to play brushes on the ballad. First set he played on sticks, but Dizzy wants brushes, and I don't have any." I said, "Are you kidding? Tony is why I'm here." I said, "You can have me. He can have these brushes. I don't want them back. He can have them." I said, "But can I come along?" And so he said, "Yeah." So he invited myself and Wallace to the side of the stage. And so we were able to watch the performance, right from there, which was like a dream come true. And then afterwards, I was able to meet Tony. And that was the first time I ever met him. I was walking on a cloud. It was amazing.
That was a literal brush with greatness.
Yeah, a brush with greatness. I like that.
Wow, that's a great story. Somewhere in the early 90s, you connected with Lenny Kravitz. So I'm trying to get the chronology straight. You already had a few records out, and you continued recording records even after you connected with Lenny, right? So how did you make that connection, and how did you sort of juggle both things?
I had no idea who Lenny Kravitz was. I didn't know him at all. I didn't know his music. He was a friend of Antoine Roney, who was Wallace's brother. And Antoine said, "My friend Lenny has been looking for a drummer for like a year and a half, and he hasn't found anyone that he wants. If he's still looking, next time he calls me," he said, "I don't have his number, so I can't call him, but he calls me every now and then. If he's still looking, would you like to talk to him?" I said, "Okay, well, who is he?" And he said, "Well, he's a rock and roller, but he likes Gretsch drums and K-Zildjian cymbals." And I'm like, "He's got ears. Okay, yeah, I'd love to talk to him." And Antoine told me that Lenny liked Miles. Of course, he liked Hendrix, and I'm like, he likes the same stuff I like. So yeah, I would love to speak with him. And about 6 months went by, and Antoine called me, says, "Hey, my friend Lenny is on the line. You want to talk to him?" And long story short, I spoke to him, and Lenny asked me if I had drums set up and in my apartment, and I did. So he asked me to play, and I played over the phone, and I finished and came back, and I said, "Well, I know the phone speaker is small. Could you hear that clearly?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm in LA. Can you fly out here right now?" And I said, "Okay." So he said, "Come out for 1 or 2 days, and just pack for 1 or 2 days, no strings attached. Just come play with my band, see how it feels. And then, I'll send you home." And I thought, okay, it'll be a chance for me to meet some new musicians. I had never been to LA, so it'll give me a chance to go to Los Angeles and see what that's like. So the next morning I had like a 6 a.m. flight. I went out there, and when I got there, he came to the airport himself to pick me up. And I was really surprised at that, and happily surprised. He was staying at this place, which was like this big mansion that was previously owned by Madonna. We didn't go straight there, though. It was actually just had been purchased by Rick Rubin. So he's good friends with Rick from Def Jam, who's obviously amazing in his own right. Lenny took me to two places before we went to the place where he was staying, to Rick's house. He took me to his mom's house, and we walk in, and I had no idea who his mother was. And I see that she's Rocky Roper, who I grew up looking at. And I was like, that's your mom? I love her. She's incredible. And, you know, you never know what someone that you see as a personality on TV or in the movies is going to be like, or what a musician that you idolize is going to be like. You know, his mom, I will always happily say, was even more amazing. She was so kind and so sweet. I loved her from the first second. She was so warm and endearing and welcoming. That was an amazing woman. One of the only few women that I've met who I wished had been best friends with my mom. That's how incredible she was. What an amazing person. I loved her. Still love her soul. She's passed on, but she was just incredible. So he took me to meet his mom, and then he took me to a casting that he was doing because he does some acting, you know. So he took me to a casting, and then we went to the house, and we're waiting on the gear to arrive from SIR, I think is where he rented from. And it took a long time. And all of a sudden I see these people come in like with a snare drum, with a bass drum pedal, with sticks. And I'm like, this is not SIR. These are drummers. So somebody announced that he was going to be hearing a drummer. And I guess his management made an announcement on the radio that he was going to audition. So there were like 40 drummers who showed up. I was a little bit jet lagged, so I went outside and kind of fell asleep in a lawn chair. And so they started the audition. He wanted me to play first, but someone else played. And his assistant, Deborah, she found me and she was like, Cindy, come on, you got to play. You got to wake up because, you know, he already started. So I played, and he basically called off the audition. He said, I want to choose Cindy. And someone in his camp said, well, you've got 38 other drummers out there, you know, who came to audition for you. It's kind of not fair that they came all this way and you're not going to hear them. So he heard all the drummers. He found one other one that he liked. And there was one guy who sent a notice saying that he was flying in from London, Michael Lee. And so the next day he had me play opposite the drummer. I forget the LA drummer that he liked, but we played opposite each other, and he still chose me. And then Michael Lee arrived, and we played opposite each other, and he still chose me. Michael Lee was a great drummer. He ended up, he passed away, so, you know, God bless him. But he ended up playing with Robert Plant, and we ended up touring together because at one point Robert opened for Lenny on a tour that we did. So, and I really love Michael's playing too. He was awesome. But Lenny chose me, and thank goodness. And so that's how our thing kind of started. And you know, I stayed instead of for 2 days, for 2 weeks. And at the end of that, we did a video. The first video I did with him, which was "Are You Gonna Go My Way?" Which was amazing. And at the end of the video, we did like a 16, 18-hour shoot that day. And he took me outside with, you know, the band and his manager and his assistant. And he said, so do you want to join my band? And I said, yeah, when do we start? And he started laughing. He said, it started 2 weeks ago. So we went into rehearsals, and that was, you know, the start of our 17-year association.
Wow. On that audition, did you just play whatever, or did you have to play to a song, or what was it?
All the drummers played, we all played, I think 2 or 3 things. Everybody played "Are You Gonna Go My Way?" which was not released yet. It was about to be released. So we all played "Are You Gonna Go My Way?" We all played a blues, and we all played, I think I played a Hendrix song, I don't remember. But everybody played at least 2 songs, and that was a blues and "Are You Gonna Go My Way?" And then I think I played a Hendrix song, I don't remember. Something like that, yeah.
Well, and you auditioned before because you were kind of just doing your own thing before then, right? So I'm not thinking you did a lot of auditioning before.
I didn't do a lot of auditioning. You know, I did an audition for Kai Winding, and he had a trombone band with himself and Curtis Fuller. And that was the only audition I think that I had done. And I went in and I knew Curtis because I was a fan of Curtis's because of, you know, Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. And I knew who Kai Winding was because I had heard him, you know, on record. And I went in, and I have to say at that time, my reading was really sharp. And so I played all the stuff down, and Kai was into it. Curtis was into it. And I didn't get the gig. And I was like, wow, I didn't get that gig. I'm really upset. I don't know why I didn't get it. I thought it went really well. And Curtis pulled me aside and he says, yeah, you know, I saw him, you know, at a club, and I was like, Curtis, I guess I don't know. I guess I didn't do as well as I thought. He says, no. He said, you were great. He says, but Kai didn't want to choose a woman. So I didn't get that. And I actually did one other audition. This was after the Kai Winding audition. I'll let that phone go. Sorry about all these rings. Carlos is doing phoners upstairs. We didn't realize that we were, our interviews were at the same time, but he's doing phoners upstairs. So we keep hearing those rings because he's doing those phoners. I heard, you know, I love Tony Williams, and I was a fan of Don Pullen, and I was listening to the radio, and I heard this record, and I'm like, that's Tony on drums, and that's Don Pullen. That must be Don's new record. So I went out and got the record, and I learned all the music just because I loved it. And my friend Vincent Herring, great alto saxophonist, called me and he said, Cindy, I know you love Tony and I know you love Don Pullen. Don is auditioning drummers. He said, I'm going to give you his number. So I was like, wow, really? I said, he's playing that music, you know, from New Beginnings? And he said, I'm pretty sure, because that's his latest record. And so I called Don, and he says, well, I got, you know, a lot of cats that I'm auditioning. So, you know, I'll take your number, but I'm good. No, thanks. And I was like, okay, I don't get a chance to audition, but, you know, I spoke to him, I said hi, and he knows, you know, that I love the music. Well, he auditioned people for a week, and apparently he didn't find the drummer that he wanted. So at the end of the week, he called me and he says, you know, I've been auditioning drummers for a week and I haven't found the person that I want yet. He says, so why don't you come down tomorrow and audition? And he was holding auditions in Alphabet City. I forget the name of the studio. But anyway, it was down in, like, I think 3rd and Avenue A or something like that. And so I went down there, and I already knew all the music just because I loved all the songs. And he started playing, and I was intrigued and my mind was blowing because the piano sounded exactly like it did on the record. So his touch was the exact same. And so I fell right into it, and I started playing, and we played almost all the songs on the record. And he looked at me and he says, wow, he says, you're the first drummer that I've done this with. He said, you got the gig. So I ended up playing with Don for 3 years. So that was a successful audition. And he later told me that the only reason that he didn't initially call me down was because he didn't think that he wanted to gig with a woman on drums. And I said, well, I'm glad you changed your mind, dude. And he said, yeah, me too, because we were having fun. So that was a good one. That was fun. And we you know, had a great association. We like I said, we played together for 3 years. And then unfortunately he passed. But it was amazing time. Yeah.
What year was that about?
That was 1989 or 90. Yeah. And we played, so we probably played together until about into 92, and he passed like right in that period. And then 93 is when I started playing with Lenny.
So, and, you know, Are You Gonna Go My Way? That video was my first introduction to you also, like I'm sure so many people, seeing you for the first time. And then subsequently, you know, I got to hear some of the great jazz you did before that. But I just rewatched it again, you know, yesterday just to, you know, get ready. How much, you know, freedom did you have creatively for that video in terms of your look, in terms of, your drum arrangement, and also as your relationship progressed with Lenny?
That was mainly a parts band because Lenny really wanted to hear, he likes to hear exactly what's on the record. So you have to learn all the parts. So I learned every bar of all the songs that we played. In fact, the guitar player used to tease me because he said, Craig, he said, "Dag, Cindy, you even learn the mistakes." So, I was able to take liberties, after a while because I knew all of the music. And then when the liberties got to be more than Lenny wanted, he'd say, "Okay, let's take this back to exactly the record." And then I knew the music, so, I could do that. And so could the rest of the guys in the band. So we would, go and experiment some and then come back and pull it back and then go and experiment some and pull it back. For that particular video that you're talking about, there was we were playing the parts of the record. So there was no creative liberty there that you were able to take in terms of the look and the visual and the drums. And I'll start with the drums. Fortunately, Lenny is a drummer too, and he loves great drum sounds. So we, were able to get our hands on an amazing Slingerland Radio King kit for that video, which I wanted to purchase. And unfortunately, the guy who rented it wouldn't sell it to me. I wanted that kit so bad. That kit sounded so good. But that was a good thing about working with Lenny, is that he really was into great drum sounds and really into having the drums stand out. So, for me, that was amazing. And it was an amazing person to communicate with about the drums because, if there was something that he wanted me to play, he'd just sit down on the drums and say, "Well, this is the groove I'm hearing on this song. Can you play that or, fool around with that or expound on that?" And easy, done. Yeah, we can communicate very well. In terms of the look, actually for that video, Lenny wanted me to shave my head. And I was cringing. I was like, absolutely not. So we went back and forth about that for quite a while at the shoot. And so, the manager was like, "Time is money. This is an expensive video. We got to move this. We got to get this along. Girl, you going to shave your head or what?" And I'm like, my grandmother would roll in her grave if I shaved my head. And I called my mom. I was like, "Mom, he wants me to shave my head." And she said, "Well, do you want to shave your head?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, then don't." And so I didn't shave my head. So we went with the small little afro thing, which I think was much better anyway, and that really led to, for me, a much cooler look because I didn't want to have the shaved head look. Some women pull it off and they look really gorgeous with it. I wasn't feeling that for myself. So, but Lenny's, he's got a great eye for style, so all the clothes were always, really cool. And the vibe was always really cool. The look of the video, that video was really cool. And, I attribute that to Lenny and to Mark Romanek, who was one of my favorite producers. He produced that video. I think that's one of my favorite videos ever, and not just because I'm in it, but I love the stage. I love the way it was set. I love the way it was filmed. I loved the whole energy of it. I think it was really great. And so between Lenny and Mark Romanek, that really happened in such a great way. So that was really an amazing thing to be a part of. I'm really happy with that and proud of that.
How'd you feel when you first heard something you were part of on the radio or saw the video on TV?
Oh, it was it was awesome. Yeah, it was a great thing. Yeah, awesome.
There's much more to this great Truth and Rhythm interview. Just continue on to the next part of the episode. Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. And become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon or consider donating at funkinstuff.net. Thank you very much.